Xi Jinping has once again made it unmistakably clear to both Washington and its allies across the West that China is not willing to compromise on what it considers its national interests, core sovereignty, and red lines. In a roaring message that carried both the tone of defiance and confidence, Xi directed sharp words at former U.S. President Donald Trump, who has once more become the center of global political discussions, as well as toward the Western bloc that often aligns itself behind American policies when it comes to China. This was not just a regular diplomatic warning. It was a statement meant to echo beyond Beijing's halls of power, a message designed for global audiences, meant to leave little ambiguity about China's position on issues ranging from Taiwan to trade, from security alliances in the Pacific to technology and economic containment. The language itself stood out. Unlike the measured, sometimes softer diplomatic expressions often used in international settings, Xi chose words that symbolized firmness, almost like a lion roaring to remind others of its strength. By telling Trump and his allies in the West to not dare cross certain boundaries, Xi was invoking a sense of authority that rests on China's growing economic might, its expanding military capabilities, and the increasingly confident projection of Chinese power in global affairs. This was a message not crafted for short-term headlines, but one intended to signal a long-term reality. Beijing sees itself as an equal to Washington and is unwilling to be treated otherwise. For Trump specifically, Xi's message resonates with the legacy of the bitter trade war that began during his presidency. When Trump imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, it triggered a fierce tit-for-tat economic clash between the world's two largest economies. While Washington claimed it was pushing back against unfair practices, Beijing saw it as an effort to suppress China's rise. Xi's latest warning brings back that memory, a reminder that China views Trump's past actions and possible future moves as direct challenges. The underlying subtext is clear. If Trump returns to power or tries to rally global support for a tougher stance on China, Beijing is ready to resist and retaliate. At the same time, this was not just about Trump. The broader message was targeted at the network of alliances the U.S. continues to nurture, whether it is NATO on the European side or partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region, such as with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and increasingly India. Xi is signaling that China will not tolerate what it perceives as collective pressure. The idea of the West banding together to constrain China, whether through military presence in the South China Sea, through technology bans, or through criticism of China's internal policies, is seen in Beijing as a challenge to its sovereignty and legitimacy. Xi's words carry the implication that any such collective push will be met with strong resistance. What makes this message stand out is the timing. The global landscape today is far more volatile than it was even 5 years ago. Conflicts in Europe, shifting alliances in the Middle East, the uncertainty around global energy supplies, and the competition for technological supremacy in areas like artificial intelligence and semiconductors have all heightened tensions. Against this backdrop, China wants to ensure that no one underestimates its determination. Xi's roar is not just about defending territory or avoiding interference. It is also about shaping perceptions. China wants to be seen not as a challenger to the West, but as a central, undeniable pillar of the world order, one that cannot be sidelined or ignored. The domestic audience in China is another important factor. Xi's leadership has long been rooted in projecting strength, stability, and the vision of a rejuvenated Chinese nation. At home, his government emphasizes themes of national pride, historical destiny, and resistance to foreign pressure. By delivering a strong message to Trump and the West, she is also consolidating domestic support, showing the Chinese people that their leadership will not bow to outside intimidation. In many ways, such speeches serve dual purposes. They send a warning abroad while reinforcing legitimacy at home. From the perspective of U.S. allies, Xi's choice of words is likely to be seen as both a warning and a challenge. Nations in Europe, many of which are already grappling with balancing economic ties to China against security commitments to the U.S., will see this as another sign of the intensifying rivalry between the two superpowers. In Asia, countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia, who have strengthened defense cooperation with the U.S., may interpret this as a reminder that aligning too closely with Washington's hard line could bring them into direct confrontation with Beijing. For India, which has had its own complicated relationship with China, Xi's words add another layer to the already delicate balance it tries to maintain between economic engagement and strategic caution. What she seems to be underscoring is that China no longer views itself as a passive player in a U.S.-led system, but rather as a country capable of shaping the rules, setting the tone, and even issuing ultimatums. Whether it is the issue of Taiwan, which Beijing considers an inseparable part of its territory, or broader disputes over maritime claims in the South China Sea, Xi's words serve notice that compromise on these matters is not on the table. To not dare cross China's red lines is to accept that Beijing's core interests are untouchable and that attempts to test them will be met with consequences. Of course, for Washington and its allies, the challenge is how to respond to this kind of assertive posture. Ignoring it risks emboldening Beijing, but confronting it directly could escalate tensions further. This delicate balance has defined U.S.-China relations for years, yet the sharpness of Xi's current message suggests that the era of cautious engagement may be giving way to something more confrontational. The fact that the words were aimed not just at Trump, but at the wider Western alliance indicates that Beijing is preparing for collective pushback and is already framing itself as strong enough to face it. For the international community, these exchanges between great powers are not just about rhetoric. They influence markets, shape security calculations, and determine the direction of global governance. Xi's message will be analyzed by diplomats, investors, and analysts worldwide, all of whom are trying to gauge how far the tensions could go. It is also a reminder that the U.S.-China rivalry is not a temporary phase, but the defining geopolitical contest of the 21st century. In the end, Xi's roaring words serve as both a declaration of intent and a warning. To Trump, they are a reminder of the unresolved battles of the past and a signal of what lies ahead if confrontation resumes. To the West, they are a demand to reconsider collective strategies of containment and interference. And to the world, they are a bold assertion that China's voice is not only loud but unyielding. Whether this message leads to more cautious policies from others or provokes sharper resistance will shape the next chapter of global politics. What is certain, however, is that Xi has left no room for doubt. The red lines have been drawn, and China expects the world to respect them.